There is this guy from Canada called Brad, and a guy from Yorkshire, he's called Dan. They got together when the Bowels tried to kill them, and made this podcast to talk about their illness. Brad and Dan are talking shit. Brad and Dan are talking shit. Yes, Brad and Dan are talking shit to you and you.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brad and Dan Talk Shit podcast, and of course welcome to the year of our Lord 2023. Congratulations to you, dear listener, for clinging on to this oversized pebble for another cycle around that great fireball in the sky. So, I hear you ask, what New Year's resolutions are those fine young men Brad and Dan keeping up to this year? Is Dan going to finally find the inner peace that would allow him to crack a smile? Or will Brad fulfill his long-held ambition to make the world's longest steak and mushroom sandwich? Possibly. Or possibly not. But dear listener, my sweet, sweet audiophiles, we will endeavour to keep you educated, entertained and occasionally touched as we continue our voyage of discovery through living lives with chronic illness. You can listen, of course, on Spotify, but if your self-loathing is such that you want to put yourself through the horror of watching words fall from our distorted faces, you can watch on YouTube as well. So, Brad, the burning question on everyone's lips, how's your shit, my man?
Oh, thanks, Dan. My shit's going pretty good. It's been the active period in my life. A lot of things going on, new journeys to be had. You know, we've talked about last time we mentioned that we announced my wife's pregnancy. So lately we've been doing a lot of baby stuff. Well, I don't know. I feel like I'm not panicking enough. Like, I'm pretty calm. But
So, as a veteran of the parenting world, my eldest is going on 17, my youngest is 10. That fear, panic, self-loathing will never leave.
no.
It just it reaches new realms of horrifying levels. So enjoy this moment, because
It's going to be a
it's
hell
good.
of a ride.
It's it's good. I love my children dearly, and they've brought so much light to my life. But at the same time, there are numerous episodes where you could strangle them or causing you more stress than you could believe. So yeah.
Like, one of my favorite dad jokes I read today was basically something along the lines of a dad saying that their son is well-mannered, a go-getter, and etc., etc., etc. And the mom responds, "We're not in a parent-teacher conference. You can just call him an asshole."
That's very true. I love the dad jokes you've been posting daily. So just a little anecdote about my dear child 2, who is all of those things. She's a go-getter. She's wildly comedic. She's very witty. She's very caring. She's fantastic. When she was learning to write, not in the house we're in now, we used to live in a terraced house, which is like a bunch of houses just pushed together, so they're quite tall but
kind of
slim.
like a townhouse
So
up here.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a townhouse. So as you open the door onto the hallway and the staircase, so you can see straight up the staircase. So I came home one day and I opened the door, and so child 2, nearly said her name. Don't do that. Child 2 opened the door, and she'd written very proudly, and I can see why. She'd written the first name of her, the first letter of her name proudly at the top of the staircase. 3 foot tall, the top of the staircase. Now, the first letter of her name is A. Now, if you could imagine such a thing, if an A is written in such a way where the A is quite narrow and has a shaft like this, and then at the very top there is the cross section. So yeah, I basically walked into a 3-foot penis at the top of my stairs.
Oh, that's
Which,
amazing.
kids will be kids.
Yes.
So then we went and we scrubbed it out. And then at the time we weren't particularly rich. We're not particularly rich now. But, so for a couple of months we were left with a lovely magnolia wall with a scrubbed out section with a white penis at the top of our stairs. So these are the kind of things you can look forward to, my friend.
See, but there's the fun part of that is just like how I treat my numerous medical adventures with the Crohn's Awareness Project. Everything's a story. So no matter what happens at the point.
Yeah. But everything's a story after the fact.
That's it. It's after the fact.
When you have friends coming round to the house and you open the door and they go, why the fuck is there a giant penis at the top of your stairs? That's a slightly different
conversation starter.
It is a conversation starter. That is very true. And I'm not going to deny that. And Child 2 has, for the last 10, 12 years that she's been alive, has been very much a conversation starter. So she's carried on in that mold. So
that's good.
Yeah, they are an abundance of joy, but at times an absolute nightmare as well. So
as I've heard from many parents, it's pretty amusing. We've been yesterday I took my wife for some blood work, and it's just so weird being on the opposite side of this now, where
you're the carer.
Yeah, last 3 years she's been taking me to medical appointments and such and waiting in the car for me. And then yesterday I was sitting in the car waiting for her, and she's texting me questions like as she's inside, and I'm just like texting her back like with like how the procedure's gonna go, how it's like how she's gonna get in there.
You're gonna get stabbed with a needle.
Luckily she only had one vial right now. It was a
so I know we're talking about you. I know we're talking about you, and I'm sorry about this, but so I had to go in twice last week for a couple of different blood tests. So I went in and had a blood test. Came out, and then my IBD nurses, my broken bowel nurses, got back in touch and said, "Oh, we need this other blood test because we're concerned about whatever." Now I don't know if this will pick up on camera, but I'm going to just show you my hand. I don't know if you can see there, but I don't know if you can see the veins on the back of my hand.
Oh, yes,
they're fairly pronounced.
You're like me.
The phlebotomist missed 4 times. And I got to the point where I was just like, just give me the fucking needle. I mean, I don't know if you're certifiably blind. And, I'm all for disabled people getting jobs and supporting care in the community. But Jesus, man, I mean... how can you miss my veins? You can see my veins from outer space.
Do you get them in your hand often? Is that is your spot the hand? Is that like where you like?
No, but my arms are the same. My arms are like a major road network.
Well, that's it.
You can see it from space.
I choose not the hand mainly because it's so frail, but like that's it. Generally, like my veins are pumping, so like
yeah. I mean, so it's the hand and the arms. When I was a nurse, I used to get other nurses on the ward to practice taking blood from me before they went on to take from patients.
Right.
But because it was just so obvious what they were doing. And this lady, lovely lady, but she missed 4 times. And I just, it's like missing, say if you're putting a golf ball, but the hole was the size of the equator. It just, I don't understand how she missed so many times. It just absolutely blew my mind.
Do you have rolling veins?
I have one spectacular vein, and it won't show up on camera, but if I twist my wrist, the whole vein just jumps to one side.
Because that's my problem.
I mean, I don't do that to fuck with the phlebotomists. I don't wait till they're close and then just flick the wrist and it goes. It's more of a party piece to freak people out when they've had one too many. But yeah, no, my veins are fairly stable and they're fairly bulbous, and there is no reason why she couldn't have hit those.
See, that's my issue is the rolling vein. But as long as I state like right when they're sitting down getting ready to do it, I'm like, hey, my veins roll. And they're like, okay, I know that. So, or like, thank you for letting me know. And they basically secure my wrist more.
Put the staples in, hold them in place. Yeah.
But if I don't, like the last time I forgot to do that, they went interstitial again. And like this time I knew the signs of it. So like I started feeling it and it was just so uncomfortable. And I already started seeing my hands swell. And the first time that happened, which is why I know it, was after my first resection in the hospital, middle of the night, I wake up and I got a Homer Simpson hand. When you don't know this, you wake up seeing your hand like 10 times the size it should be. You're justifiably freaked out. Yeah, one finger less.
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah, again, with the history of nursing, the amount of times where you'll set up a drip and you think that's going good, and you go back to the patient and they've got a golf ball on their arm. You think,
when a lot of people don't realize, like I wouldn't have realized had I not gone through it, right? Like,
yeah. It's just
all learning.
But anyway, we digress. How is the lovely lady, her indoors?
Oh, she's doing really good.
How's she doing with the pregnancy?
Well, half the time she doesn't feel it's real because she doesn't have a lot of the negative side effects of pregnancy. So, like, we actually have a baby monitor arriving tomorrow, so we can listen to the heartbeat at our own will.
See, I remember this. I remember this well, of the paranoia of, how is baby doing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you not worry that you're going to be checking like every 13 minutes?
Myself, not so much.
Especially in
maybe.
This period until you're towards the end when you can feel baby moving a lot.
Yeah.
But like right now, I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse to have that kind of technology.
I guess we'll find out.
I guess we will, yeah. I look forward to the next few podcasts where you can tell us that it's become an absolute nightmare or it's a blessing.
Hey, you know what I should do is, like, I've actually thought of this before when I was doing, it's like a shelved project for now, something I'd like to come back to, is I was doing this big narrative feature for Gaming for Guts, and it involved like using a video game to create a branching story with G for G characters. Okay. And fuck, my thought train just went gone.
Okay, we'll edit that bit out. It's fine.
Yes, no, we will. That's the problem with my, like, how long of this disease you go through. Your brain farts are real, man. It's just like sometimes I'll be talking and it's just like,
I'll be honest. I think that's just age.
There's that.
I think that's just as we creep towards the exit of this mortal coil, our brains just become more and more liquidated.
I remember what I was gonna say. I was gonna say is I want to listen to my guts. I want to put that thing on my stomach and see if I can listen to Gus and Shaun. And then record that.
Make an R&B record out of it.
I was thinking using it for creature sounds. And then get a nice...
Everybody, here we go. Nice.
Yeah. It'd be good.
It sounds like a Christmas #1 in the making, if I'm honest.
Hey, there you go. We'll see. End of the year. It's coming.
Yeah.
Look out for it.
Careers towards us are too fast.
Yeah, well, what can you do, right? So
precisely.
That is a fair amount of what's going on with me. How's your shit?
And hopefully that elongated moan will answer the question.
Yeah, it gives you a good idea.
Yeah, a bit of a crappy start to the year. So my intention this year was to get back into sports, which brings us on to our guest today. But I managed 2 runs this year, and I had flu just before Christmas, then overdid it at Christmas, and then went out for a run, managed 5 kilometers, nearly died. Gave it a day, did 6 kilometers, nearly died. And then my foot swelled up to the size of your face, essentially. Got an infection in my foot. I suspect I've got a broken toe. So then was on antibiotics for 10 days, which was fine, but just couldn't do the exercise that I'd planned to do this year. And then finished the antibiotics, everything settled down. Still a bit of pain, but then did a couple of runs earlier this week, which went reasonably well again. And for anyone who does running or any sort of exercise, if you leave it any period of time, your fitness just you kind of have a plateau where you can kind of cope, you can kind of cope,
Mm-hmm.
kind of cope, and then it goes, now you've done fuck all for far too long.
Yep.
So I've kind of done that twice. I've tried to get back to it this week. And and then we've been hit by a cold spell, so it's now -3
I
here.
saw you guys got some snow. Or
Well,
did you get
no,
snow?
we didn't until I went out for a run yesterday, and then within about 500 yards of my leaving the front door, I was hit by a blizzard.
Okay.
So that was very.
And that's
festive.
unusual for you guys, right?
Yeah. So where I live is, if you look at the UK map, so if you include Scotland, Wales, and England, I'm pretty much central.
Okay.
If you're just looking at England, I'm northern England. But if you look at Scotland as well, I'm kind of bang central.
Right.
So Scotland got loads of snow.
South
that
makes
got
sense.
a bit of snow. Wales got a bit of snow. I got
A touch.
about 20 minutes of blizzard while I was running. It was very vindictive of the weather. And then, in terms of the old guts, not been great in the last few days, if I'm honest. But we will see how that goes.
Well, I like to listen to what you're doing and then interpolate what's going on. So I can say one thing is, maybe when you're trying to push back to your running, that you should start slower and like work back up. Maybe not jump into the 5-6K right away. But
you don't realize how slow I was doing that 5K. it actually took me 6 hours.
Well, that's impressive.
500 yards, nap for 30 minutes.
Oh, no,
another
that's
500
my type
yards,
of run.
nap for 20 minutes.
Get a beer halfway through.
No, I felt good. It's and I feel good. It's literally just the amount I'm having to visit our porcelain friend has gone up quite a lot in the last few days. And I don't know why. And the worrying thing is, at the moment, is I'm eating a lot less, and I'm going a lot more. And I don't know if you can kind of see from our last podcast, but it looks to me, looking in the camera, like I've lost a bit of weight on my face.
Yeah, I can see it.
Which was kind of intentional. I wanted to lose a bit of weight because over Christmas I did overdo it. Just starting to get a little niggly feeling that things aren't right.
Now,
but we'll see.
Diet isn't everything, but have you like taken a personal account of like what you're consuming? And
yeah. No, I write everything down. I mean,
yeah,
the joy of this age we live in, where huge tech conglomerates want to have every available iota of information on you, means that my phone has a fitness plan where it marks my steps, it marks where I go, it marks what I eat if I put it in, and I do put it in for that reason.
Yes,
it makes life easier for me if I put everything I eat on the app. And yeah, it's just. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how we go. We know this is a ride where we have ups and we have downs.
Oh, yes.
And we have rights, we have lefts, and we have
when was your last infusion?
Early part of December. So my next one is 3rd of February.
So this could also be typically with like your medications, especially biologics. And this is why I've always been like bumped up, is you have like kind of like a roller coaster effect of like you get it and it's like good. You get like to a certain point and then it's down coast, right?
Yeah.
And it's finding that point.
Yeah, so with the biologics, I had 2 while I was in hospital, which, they saved my bowel. I can't, I think they're fantastic. They saved me from having my bowel whipped out. And then the first dose I had no issues with. Second dose, I guess looking back, I kind of had that reaction.
Hmm.
Now I'm on to fifth dose, third dose out of hospital.
Yeah.
And that certainly seems to be the case.
So what they
Now,
might do, depending on you and how you're feeling, is they might bump up the frequency. So like for me,
yeah,
usually most drugs are every 8 weeks. I have always been bumped up. So like with the 8 weeks ones, I was bumped up to 4. Humira was every 4 weeks, and I was bumped up to 1. So like basically
right.
my GI would find that point where the downtrend started. It's like, okay, that's when you're getting your infusion.
Well, there's something to look forward to.
So that is part of
I've,
your
I've,
like
I've
figuring it
already had
out.
one vein completely trashed by a cannula. You know, we have many to go, but you know, by the end of the year, I could look like a skaghead without any veins.
Been
Anyway,
there.
on a positive note, so we should really move this along.
Yep.
So today's podcast, we have to say this. We have to give thanks to our guest today for jumping in late notice. We also have to say a big we wish you well to Tom,
Yes.
who was scheduled to be our guest today, but unfortunately, and as he put it fantastically well, this is the issue when you deal with a podcast regarding chronically ill people. He's unfortunately in hospital at the moment, so was unable to take part. Our guest has valiantly stepped up and has willingly entered this unholy mess of a podcast. So, without further ado, we will introduce our guest for the day.
Awesome.
Brad and Dan talk shit.
So, on the show today, we have Shaun with us, who is a long-term sufferer of ulcerative colitis, who has been on quite a journey. So, Shaun, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Dan. Yourself?
Absolutely tip-top. Now, I think we
Hi, Dad.
probably need to lift the veil behind the magic that makes this podcast happen and explain that since the podcast intro, I have a lot more stubble and look like I've had a lot less sleep. That is because this week we've had to record this podcast in 2 parts. So my apologies for my abrupt appearance and the very quick dishevelment for those watching on YouTube.
It'll be an
So anyway.
amusing back and forth, honestly.
Yeah. We needed to get that out of the way, otherwise there would be some serious questions about the speed at which my facial hair grows. So anyway, Shaun,
Welcome.
why don't you tell us? Yes, welcome to the show. Sorry.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and get us kicked off with today's topics?
Yeah, so obviously my name's Shaun Lambourne. I do a very similar job to yourself, Dan. In medical advice, it involves a lot of travelling around and a lot of managing of my condition of ulcerative colitis. Pretty much when did I have it? I think I've had it since my late teens, really. I knew my toilet habits when I was sort of 19 were quite different to people at university with me. My GP at the time said it was due to my lifestyle and probably being a bit embarrassed. I was quite happy for that to be given as the case. I was single. I was still quite young and probably quite happy for that to be part as it was. Pretty embarrassing. Like I say, got to about 2004 and I was losing blood up quite a lot, and I went to see my GP and I had a colonoscopy, and then they found a little bit of proctitis, a bit of inflammation of the rectum.
So proctitis is inflammation of the rectum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So what they found with that, Dan and Brad, was basically just give me some suppositories. And when I was getting an inflammation, pop them where you pop them, and it should reduce the inflammation. And that sort of continued till about 2009, where that would generally work if I was getting symptoms and stress. It was often correlated with lots of pressure at work or personal issues. I'd get an inflammation. 2009, it started with that weren't quite doing the trick. So again, we had another colonoscopy. There was more inflammation, so I was given some steroids at the time and some stronger suppositories. And again, that seemed to do the trick. It calmed things down. And no surgery was required, no major time off work, and things like that. By that time, though, I was significantly adapting my lifestyle to having a condition such as inflammatory bowel disease.
Right.
So probably from about 2006 onwards, I was still sort of single before that. And so, for example, you go into a disco or a bar, some of my friends were checking out where the ladies were, I was checking out where the toilets were.
Yes.
And it was probably by 2009 as well that I was more comfortable with it. I was at that stage, I was with my then girlfriend, now wife. So I was in a position to actually talk things through. And when I felt I was losing blood, when I was feeling a lot of symptoms, when I was having to go to the toilet a lot, I was more happy to talk that through with my then girlfriend, although we just started living together. I was then more comfortable doing it. And then we got to about 2014 and my symptoms really ramped up quite significantly. I was still playing a bit of football then, but I couldn't play more than a half of match without needing to go to open my bowels.
Right.
And then on one particular day, I come back from work and I was in a real bad place. I was losing lots of blood. And I said to my wife, which happened sporadically between 2009, I said, I just want to go to bed. I don't want any dinner. I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to socialise. I just want to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. But she came up to check on me, which she did. And she found me asleep, but in a lot of blood had left me and was in the bed. So she called the ambulance that particular night. And thankfully, the paramedics came and took me into hospital. Again, I was given lots of strong medicines, steroids, anti-inflammatories, enemas, in an attempt to reduce the inflammation and try and get me out of hospital, but it didn't work. And therefore, they removed my large intestine, the entirety of it. And so then I went on to having an ileostomy.
Mm-hmm.
Having UC, and it's more with patients with UC, the reversal is more of an option because it can be that the ulcers are quite concentrated into the large intestine, as where perhaps with Crohn's it goes more from the esophagus right down to the rectum.
Yeah.
So having that, I kept the blood supply to my rectum, hoping that potentially one day there would be a chance of a reversal. At the time in 2014, my kids were still young, of an age where they wanted to jump on me, things like that. Having a bag wasn't ideal at the time, as my kids were of an age where they couldn't go swimming on their own. I had to get in the pool with them. So I thought it'd bother me more than it did. When I got in the swimming pool with a bag, I actually realised that the technology was really good. They never split in the pool, not once. They split when I was in restaurants, for no particular reason. But actually, when I was in the pool, I was going on slides with my 7-year-old daughter sat on my lap. No problem at all. So it was brilliant. But at the time, it was more the anxiety of it.
Yes.
So I had a bag. In 2015, I had what's called a J pouch operation, where they make a new pouch out of your small intestine, which should store the waste. And then when you open your bowels, it comes out the J pouch. And that was probably the toughest operation of all. In terms, I was in hospital for 21 nights. It was very invasive, lots of symptoms, lots of bile production. It took quite a long recovery. But the one thing I'll always say with inflammatory bowel disease, it's a two-way journey. Yes, you go to some pretty dark places, but you do come back.
Yes.
And so I can promise that to anyone. You will go to dark places, but you will come back.
As long as you put that effort in, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Obviously, your mindset is so important in these situations.
Yeah.
And like you say, you have to listen to the physicians. But if you have that mindset, yeah, it does work.
It's also listening to you, your body.
I couldn't agree with you more, Brad. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2017, I was fully reversed, which was a straightforward operation, really. The pouch was already made. They just had to close off my ileostomy, so closed off the wound in my stomach, and what we call the stoma, which is your new bottom or second penis, as I used to call it, because it used to come out my stomach.
I like that.
And they close that off and then just reattach it to your rectum, and then you start going to the toilet as I always did. So that's where I am now. I'm currently in a stage of what's called pouchitis. So it's where your pouch can become a little bit inflamed. I'm currently going through that at the moment. It's not pleasant, but it's quite normal for people that have had reversals. And it just means back to my job, I have to tailor what I do. And I have to manage it, but that's nothing new. I've had to manage UC since my late teens, really. So,
right.
Yeah. It's just normal life for you, isn't it?
Exactly.
It comes
absolutely.
that way, yeah.
It's just one of those things.
So I wanted to ask, and this is very tongue in cheek, but so when your wife found you in the bed covered in the blood, obviously it's a very traumatic time for both of you, but has she ever forgiven you for ruining the mattress? And how often does that come up? I only ask because my wife got 2 speeding tickets while I was in hospital this summer, and she still insists it's my fault because she was too worried about me to concentrate on the speed limit. So it's absolutely my fault.
Yeah, I think I think I'd left my socks next to the bed as well, and not put them in the washing basket. In trouble for that as well, Dan. So there's loads of things she had, but that was one of them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the mattress. I probably had to stump up for a new mattress when I got out of hospital.
Yeah.
So.
Nice. I like that.
So how obviously you've been on a hell of a journey. So up until your last little bit where you're talking about your pouchitis, it was like you've gone full circle. So you've gone from early teens where there's nothing wrong to late teens where you're a bit different, but it's not bothering you too much, obviously, all the way through your surgical journey. So before the pouchitis with your J pouch, was that almost like being back to your early teens in terms of health wise?
No, is the answer.
Okay.
But it was I still open my bowels 9 times a day with my pouch, so it's not like I go once or twice a day. But what I would say is I was in control of that. So perhaps in the worst symptom times of UC and Crohn's, like you guys go, like you might have to dash to the toilet or pull in at a service station unannounced. You think, oh my God, it's gone. Whether you sit, I can tell it's happened because of the way you laugh.
Well, it hasn't so much. I mean, well, when I became ill this summer, I'd had about 4 weeks of this diarrhea and blood. So at that point, it was I needed to know where the toilet was, and I was in Dublin Airport, and so that was my only experience of it really being quite bad. But for me to Dublin is a 30-minute flight. You don't have to go through passport control. Along the way there were lots of toilet stops, and that's fine. So tomorrow on Sunday I'm doing a 6-hour drive down to Swansea. Now, if I was in the position that I was in the summer, now having to do that drive, it would fill me with dread. Because services are that intermittent. So how did you cope with that kind of commute? Because I know, like you say, we were in the same line of work. We do travel a lot, and I know, Brad, you're in a much bigger country than we are. But I mean, in our job, we can be expected to drive from one end of the country and back again in the same day.
I'm lucky to get to my neighboring province in the same day.
So maybe trips for you take a little bit more planning anyway. So how did you manage that with your worst times?
You're dead right. I mean, Imodium is a good pal at times. If you've got a long drive, there's probably not a service station in the UK that I've not been to. But also as well as, like, for example, on the M6 when I drove to Glasgow before Christmas, you probably think, right, I'll have one near Penrith because although I don't need it now, I probably will.
We've got 150 miles before the next one. Exactly.
So it'd be sort of tactical opening of your bowels, if you like, which I've become sort of quite accustomed to that as well.
You're a tactical expert at bowel opening.
Yes, it's a bit like being maybe very Have you guys got children?
Yes.
He does. I'm literally, one is in the oven.
Oh, okay, great. Well, you'll be in this bit. Dan will know it. Brad, when you say to your child, "Do you need the toilet?" and they go, "No," and you go, "Are you sure you don't want to just try before we go out?" It's a bit like that, really.
I've heard of this, yes.
Yeah, so I just try at Carlisle, or well, in between Penrith and Carlisle, before knowing that Glasgow was another 150 miles away, and I'd be in a bit of a problem.
You must have had to add time onto your journeys then.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you not only are you looking at the logistics of where you can stop, but then you're saying, I'm going to need 15 minutes for that stop, 15 minutes for that stop, 15 minutes for that stop. So a 6-hour journey becomes an 8-hour journey.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
No time.
It definitely does, Dan. That's absolutely say. Things like Google Maps, I definitely add a bit of a buffer onto that. And sometimes as well, quite often is if I was really pushed. So, for example, if I'm going to certain areas of the UK where traffic can build up and you get that mad rush, I'll go the night before. So I go the night before thinking the pressure's off. I'm already in that location. So, for example, I live about an hour and a half northwest of London. But if I have to get to Brighton, now I have to go through London to get it. I'll probably just go the night before, thinking I don't have to worry about getting caught in traffic, and therefore I can have my loo breaks. And I've always done that. That, like you say, that's part of managing the condition.
Yeah.
Again, you can tactically eat or not eat if you need to as well. That does affect how often I need to open my bowels. So there are things of just getting to manage the condition, like we all have to, really.
This kind of goes back to the topic of knowing your body, knowing how it reacts to certain things. And we're talking about travel and such, and like having to plan around things. Did you have, when you were having your ileostomy, did you notice how, so I go to the washroom a fair amount, but there's one key difference: time. Because I can get into that washroom and back within 30 seconds to a minute, compared to before ileostomy of 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
Did you have that same type of evolution?
With the ileostomy, I'll always say to my mates about it, so that you don't have to wipe your ass.
No.
So it's great.
You just have to turn the tap.
Yeah, you literally turn the tap, exit open, job done. And I don't know, I'm sure yourself, but I'd put my bag on knowing that it positions nicely between my legs, so I can just open it. It's a much smoother experience than going to the loo. For anyone going through that experience or about to, it really isn't all bad. And one thing about having a bag as well, for the first time in years, I was in control.
Yes.
You see,
100%.
I went to the toilet when I wanted to go. So if I wanted to watch the end of a football match, I waited.
Yeah.
If I wanted to finish my bike ride, I waited. And that was the best part of it, is that I had that control back and I owned the process.
Right.
And that was the biggest boost.
It feels good. And like the one thing I've noticed, we're talking about the travel distance with like driving and such. Knowing where all the washroom stops was, like you mentioned, a necessity. Now I don't care. I'll just stop on the side of the road because I've got a car kit to go to the washroom if I have to. And honestly, I'll do that 100 times over than using some crappy like roadside washroom.
The one thing I would say though as well is that having the bag takes the urgency away from needing to go. But actually, by having a bag, and so I've gone not bag, not bag.
Mm-hmm.
You actually get, when you go to an event, you get, for having a bag, you get it cuts a lot more ice. I remember I went to the darts Alexandra Palace, and I had a bag, and I just said to the guy in the crowd, I just said, look, I said to the guy, look, I've got my bag. And I said, I thought it was just going to need changing. I could just feel some air getting in the top of it. And I said, I've taped it down, but I said, I may need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I will. And if I need to go, I'm going to need to go fairly urgently. And he said, look, I'm just going to base myself there while the dance is on. Just let me know if you need. Anyway, about an hour and a half into the darts, I needed to change my bag.
Mm-hmm.
And he immediately went, right, fine, you're coming with me. And what he did was he took me down. He took me to another steward, and I walked to the VIP toilets with a famous footballer, basically because I was treated like that. And the same happened at Royal Ascot as well, that I just got taken out every time to the nice toilets because I'd been at the horse racing, and towards the end of the day, the toilets were not so nice because you know, alcohol and whatever, food and all that sort of thing. So again, a lot of people. But now not having a bag, there's probably I'm just one of the members of the public. I've got what's called a can't wait card from I've got the Crohn's and Colitis t-shirt on tonight. Crohn's and Colitis UK. But really, it's just more like being normal. And I would probably say that that's the awareness of someone without a bag who's got UC or Crohn's is probably needs it more urgently than someone that has, because the person who's got the bag is in control. Yes, it's a bit annoying having a full heavy bag, but you can actually wait a couple of minutes longer.
I suppose there's something psychological there as well. Once you've come to terms with having your bag, like you say, it's like you open a tap, you shut a tap, you're done, bathroom's done. Someone with UC or Crohn's who hasn't got to the stage of needing a bag, but has to go up to someone and say, I need to go use the bathroom maybe 3-4 times in the next hour. I think psychologically that can be it's sort of like it's like admitting to being unclean in some weird way, because you're having to go through the like you say, wiping your ass and doing all that stuff. And bizarrely, for some, it reminded me that you've got the Crohn's Colitis UK t-shirt on. So I went to a social event, and there was a woman there who refused to use her can't wait card.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was far too embarrassed. Now everyone else there who had a stoma was like, yeah, fine. Yeah, do you want to see my bag? They were like really body positive and really forward thinking about it. But this lady, bless her, who was just absolutely crippled by the anxiety of having to admit to having to go to the toilet to someone she didn't know. So I just popped in there.
It's a real tough. I get it. I'm over it, but I do get it.
It's a stumbling point, and there are a lot of folks that have a hard time getting out of it. And I feel like it's largely probably due to the surrounding people around them, right? Because when your loved ones, friends, etc. are good, like my friends are amazing, like they've been so good, it makes me like more comfortable. And doing that, it's like I probably feel the best about myself I ever have since my ileostomy surgery.
Brilliant. Well done.
But yeah,
so I think that brings us round to your questions regarding the surgery, Brad, quite nicely.
Well, yeah. Before we talk about that, this came up, pardon me, sorry, while we're talking, because I didn't actually notice this while I was going through all the notes. Was there ever conversations about other medications, Shaun? Like, did you have any conversations about biologics, or did it just go from, we're going to do some suppositories straight to, let's go to surgery?
No, there was the conversation. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've missed out a little bit of the story.
No, it's okay.
So while I was in hospital, for 9 days.
Okay.
While they were trying steroids, they never got to biologics because they did the colonoscopy. Eventually, it took 9 days to get that done, and the gastroenterologist did the colonoscopy. And at the end of that, before we got to biologics, he basically turned around to me and said, look, I just think that he said, I've just looked up your large intestine. He goes, it's so inflamed.
Okay.
I think colitis has beaten us. And he said, I think it's time to hand you over to the surgery team. He said, as a medical situation, I think your time with us has come to an end, and I think it's time to put you in touch with the surgery team. So it wasn't that it wasn't discussed. It was felt that it was another weapon that probably wouldn't win the battle.
And then you would just be spending a bunch of time like dealing with the ups and downs of the medications. Yeah, that's fair. That's good to know.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so it was a bit like that, really. So, which, I'm eternally grateful for, because I think it was a very sensible thing to do. I'm like Dan, I work with the NHS as well sometimes. Actually, there's a finite resource as well, and sometimes by cutting that time, it cut my bed stay. It got me on my life quick. It got my head around having a bag as well, because that time of, am I going to have a bag? Am I not? That 9 days, quite a long time. So that was a good decision. I certainly wasn't pushing to say, right, I went with their clinical decision.
Right. And you mentioned that your brother had gone through IBD.
Yeah.
How did that prepare you for like what you went through, and ultimately how did your two conditions differ?
Not by much, if I'm being honest. So my brother had UC diagnosed when he was sort of to the end of his secondary school. So I would have been at the beginning of secondary school then. He's 4 years older than me. And he ended up having surgery when he was 19.
Okay.
So his first round of surgery to go to ileostomy was when he was 19. And he had a reversal straight away. So in those days, which would have been the late 90s, 98, 99, they did it in 2 stages. They didn't make the pouch and then reverse it. They did it in 2 stages. So he then had his reversed.
Right.
And he's still going strong with it now.
Oh, that's good.
In terms of, I mean, he was fantastic to have at the time in terms of his experience, and he's talking about getting to know how to use a bag. It was just another resource as well.
Yeah.
And he'd give me little tips on things like, for example, we're both sports nuts, both love football or soccer. And he'd tell me like little bags to use for if you're playing sport, bags to use.
Oh, that's good.
Going on a long train journey and you want something slightly bigger. It was fantastic like that. And I suppose as well, what took home from him was how brave he actually was, because he was at university when his second operation went with. He had a really good friend who knew his situation as well. His best friend went to the same uni as him, thankfully, and he was fantastic as well.
That's good.
But the bravery that he went through showed me, but it also showed me that, he went to a really dark place, but he came back and come back exactly the same person as I always knew and looked up to. He was still my big brother. He's still someone who, I sort of copied a lot when I was growing up. So it showed me that he could go to these dark places, but he'd come back.
Oh, that's good.
Stronger, really. He was playing football, still could do more keep-ups than me and everything like that.
I was just about to say, on a lighter note, as siblings always are, did you manage to find a way to make your UC competitive? So was there a thing is there a thing at Christmas where, you don't know what UC, mine was far worse than yours, or anything like that?
Worst thing he used to do, apologies for anyone who's having their dinner now. What he used to do was, because when he was at sixth form after his first operation, he got the bag. He'd be at home and he'd let the break wind, so the air in his bag, and then he'd go into my bedroom, empty the air, then shut the door really quickly. Right, and he'd do that throughout the whole day. And so I'd come in from school and have a full day's worth of wind in my bedroom.
That is horrendous.
The worst thing was, by the time I didn't live with him anymore, so I could never have him back. So I really wanted to think, could I just go and stay with him for a couple of weeks, just empty my bag? But he was married then with children. So,
man.
I never had that done.
The flip side to that is you've just given everyone with stomas and a vindictive attitude.
Yeah, right.
Hell of a prank to play on their loved ones.
100%.
I have done that to myself. Like, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like letting the air out that much yet, but there was one point in bed where I was like, I didn't want to get up to go to the washroom. I did that like little feel, and I'm like, it feels like it's mostly air. So like for the first time, I'm like, I'm gonna let out the air. Holy, was that the wrong decision? I just put a fucking like gas bomb in my blankets. It's just like every time I lift it up, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's definitely true. It's a bit like Dan. They say that farts are like kids because you like your own but nobody else's. But when you've got a bag, you don't like your own.
You're so true, man. Oh,
so, yeah, it certainly wasn't the pleasantest thing to come home from school to when I was at high school.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so it sort of leads me to another question. This one's going to come in 2 parts. One, while you had your ileostomy and your stoma, did you name it? And two, um, how was your healing progression between each of your stages of surgery, and like how did they differ from one another?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I think I alluded to it earlier. It was my second penis, or something else. But the running
But
joke
no
was
name,
that
no name.
it began with D and ended in K. So D1 and D2.
Okay.
But my running joke to my wife was that the stoma D got more action than stoma than the other one, because we're married, and that goes out the
Oh,
window.
that's hilarious.
So there was that one. And so in terms of the surgery, it was, so stage one, it probably took about sort of 3 months before I was back doing sport, so cycling, bit of running, light training in the gym, and 6 months before I was really myself, if you like. I was playing five-a-side football, or cycling to an extent that I felt was my level.
Hmm.
Surgery two, so the J-pokes, that took longer. That took a lot
Yeah, you
longer to
mentioned,
get
yeah.
far more invasive, but without going into the minute side of it, that I had a lot of wound care as well. So
Mhm.
I was being sick a lot in the hospital, and I burst my stitches.
Oh,
So they had to then fix that wound as well. Yeah, it was
oof,
quite nasty, that
yeah.
one. So that wound care took a lot of packing, where nurses had to come out and pack it from the bottom and heal it up.
I've got that
So
going
that's,
on.
yeah, it does get better. It does get to a stage where you can pack it. I got to say I could pack it myself in the end. So the
Right.
nurse didn't come out regularly. And obviously with an open wound, you can't get walking, can't get active, and all that. And like you say, it's good for your mind. So
Yes.
once you can get out and about doing your own exercise, even stupid little things like going and buying a newspaper and back to it from the shop, those types of things, you become more independent. But that took a lot longer. So I was probably then back in the gym probably after about 6 months, and
Okay.
back to normal fitness levels probably about 9 months.
And
So that
So
oh, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
I was just going to ask. So we know how closely related fitness and health and sports and mental health are. So in that 6 months, how are you finding things
Hmm.
mental health wise?
tough. Yeah, it was really tough.
Yeah.
It was part of the process. So um, it was really tough sort of watching. It was and my operations were always in May. So I had a summer of,
Oh,
I live
wow.
in England, so it's not brilliant, but I had a summer of nice weather where, I was hearing cricket played on my local village green thing. There's another group. I was seeing
Yeah.
loads of people out cycling, playing football.
Hmm.
1 year was the World Cup year. England didn't do very well in it, but it was a World Cup year, so football was man. I couldn't do any of those things. It was really tough. Um, but looking back now, as I said to you earlier, Brad, it just looks like that minuscule part of time, and it's just
Yes.
part of the time I needed to get myself right.
Now,
So, and I actually think if I'd have pushed it too quick, too early, I'd have just done myself more long-term damage.
I was going to say, during that point, was there any time when you were, say, doing some exercise or whatnot, where you encountered a moment where you're like, this is too much, I need to like take a step back and reevaluate what I'm doing and how I'm tackling this?
Yes.
Okay.
So I went to a circuit training class, which is one of the things I really enjoyed after my first round of surgery. I went there after my second round, and I just kept getting a real burning sensation in my abdominals. I clearly wasn't ready for it, but I'd sort of made a promise with my wife that I would listen to my body, as you said earlier. So I said, if it
Yes.
didn't feel right, it wasn't. And so the instructor, I had also said, look, I'm giving it a go, but I may need to bail. And I did bail.
Okay.
And then gave it another month off, and then went back to that. So I
That's
think
good.
anyone coming back for it, listen to your body, and
Yeah.
and accept, even if the progress is not what you want it. If you're making progress, embrace it.
Yes.
You're building strong foundations for coming back stronger. So don't put a massive strict clock on it. Be open-minded. You may have a slow week and then a really fast week, and just take the journey as it comes. But you will get back to you and where you were, but just give it time.
That's 100%. I like that message. You've nailed it on the head.
You need to go into inspirational speaking, Shaun.
Yeah, there you go. And Dan, do you have another question?
Yeah. So let me just find it here. So I think we've kind of covered it a little bit, but so just focusing on the sports again.
Yeah.
Was there? So you've had 2 surgeries. Your abdominals are going to be
3
destroyed. 3 surgeries. Sorry, your abdominals are going to have taken a hell of a pasting. Are there sports that you used to be able to do that you can't do now, and have you replaced them with anything? Have you subsidized them with another sport?
Good question.
Good question. The short answer is yes.
Okay.
Now, my IBD really kicked off when I was 32.
Mhm.
So before that, I played football. I lived and breathed football. I still love football now, but I used to play it at a fairly decent level. So I was probably coming to the end of my days anyway at 32. So my best days were certainly behind me for reasons outside inflammatory bowel disease. My knees were not good.
Mhm.
One of my ankles was really playing me up regularly. So as you do when you go over 30 in football,
Everything falls apart.
Indeed, yeah. So I'd love to blame it on my backside, but things were going south anyway.
It was just old Father Time kicking your ass.
Exactly. But by the time the whole surgery had finished, I was 35, and I've actually gone back to playing a bit of vets football now. So I do play a bit of 11 aside. So I am back playing, but I would say that's when I got into cycling. When I came back. So I sort of had that in mind. A good buddy who I played football with said to me, "There's 2 things you want to get into when you finish playing football: golf or cycling." So when I hit 30, I asked for Christmas to have golf lessons. I had 12 of them, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. So I felt that I sometimes do play around golf. Would I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning?
You couldn't bear to dress like a twat, so you chose cycling instead.
And that, yeah. And to do that at 5 o'clock in the morning in the pee and rain as well. So I like it quite. But I do get up at 6 in the morning and go cycling for 30 miles. So I have got the bug for that for sure. And I find with cycling as well, I cycle on my own a bit. I cycle in a group. I find the cycling is a bit more like the football banter where you take the mickey out of each other. Like you turn up in your cycling kit and someone will say, "Couldn't you get that top in your size?" Or things like that you used to do in the football dressing room. I find it just like that. And sometimes we go for a coffee or a beer afterwards and have a chat about, continue to take the mickey out of each other. So I find that more like football. So I'd say that cycling's replaced it. It probably would have replaced it anyway because I was getting to that age. The cycling's definitely replaced the football.
I guess cycling, because it's low impact and your weight is supported, the strain on your body is slightly lessened compared to other physical pursuits, shall we say?
Yeah, absolutely. So things like that. Yeah, definitely.
So Brad's currently taking over the world of yoga.
Brilliant. And that'll strengthen your core back up.
That's kind of it.
And probably, I don't know, with a bag, when I had a bag as well, it affected my posture.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can, things like yoga and Pilates that can really strengthen up your form and those sort of things, I think are brilliant, great for the mind as well. So
that part I'm still working on. I'm enjoying the stretching. The mind part, I've never been good with stuff, but I'm getting there. There's definitely been a couple days where like I went into it like right pissed off because of something and then came out of it going, okay, I feel better. Maybe that mind thing is working at the right points. Like other times it's just, I'm struggling to find where to put it. I think in the last few days I've like started to narrow it down, but for me, for being sick for so long, like I have a morning routine. Like I get up, I have my coffee, I make breakfast. I have to have breakfast or my day's just gone. So for me, it was a struggle finding out where to do it. And now that I have that point, it's feeling good. And I'm probably going to continue especially with the fact of children coming. I feel like my body should be nice and limber.
But yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, I think you've got Peloton, haven't you, as well? So
Yes.
you know that will come. All those things will come soon. So, and the Pilates and the yoga will help all that. So that mobility stuff. The amount of people, I do a bit of triathlon, as I think I've mentioned.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mean to mention you were borderline psychotic by doing such things to yourselves.
Well, some of the guys are. Some of the guys I'm friendly with do Ironmans and ridiculous distances and ultras.
Yeah.
But all of them say the same thing. They wish they did, especially in their younger days, more mobility stuff like Pilates, yoga, and they said that would have really helped them now and would have helped them in the younger days. So I think things like that are great, but also the social side of things as well. You get rapport with people who fellow yoga enthusiasts, fellow cyclists, fellow runners. I know you do their running, Dan, as well.
I wouldn't call it running. It's more a sorry, sobbing jog.
I've seen one of his runs recently, and it looked like a run to me. So I thought it looked quite a good, decent time there, Dan. So no,
Well, thank you. I think so. Going back to what you said, Brad, about the timing of the thing, and I think everyone loves a routine. Everyone loves a morning routine. I tried to do yoga for a little bit, and that's what I really struggled with, was finding the time for half an hour. And that's why I got into running. So you can do a quick 15-minute 3K, or you can do a half-hour 5K, or you can do an hour's 10K, or even if you're feeling really adventurous and you've got the time, you can do 15K in a couple of hours or whatever. So it's a bit more flexible to your time, as because especially when you're learning yoga, you don't have to learn how to run.
Yeah.
You can literally just put your trainers on and go out for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever. Yoga, you have to actually learn what you're supposed to be doing. So you have to follow a plan. And I really struggled with finding the time to actually fit that in on a regular, regimented basis.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to get back to kickboxing in the next month, if my body will permit. But given the work I do, so this week I'd have missed every class. Next week, with what I've got on, I'll miss every class. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, time is a huge thing with exercise, but it's also really important to keep it up.
Yes.
Finding the time to squeeze it into your day is massive.
Speaking about time, we are starting to run a little late on our session, so I want to end this question period off. We've talked a lot about your sports activities. What is your favorite sports activity? What is the one that you love to do the most?
So if you'd knock 15 years off my age, I'd love football. So football is my I grew up with football. I lived and breathed it. But probably now the one I enjoy the most is cycling.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and that's not based on the surgery that I've had, Brad. That's based on my age.
My parents love cycling. They got into it heavy. They cycle, like they travel the world cycling. Like it seems I could get into it, I think.
It's just a really nice social sport. Yeah, it's low impact, as Dan said. It's and what's also, that was another thing why I preferred it over golf. If you've got 30 minutes for a cycle ride,
that's
you
true.
don't have 30 minutes. You don't go and play 4 holes on a golf course. You play 9 or 18. That's it, really. So for cycling, it's just great like that. I love the endorphins. I love, like, where I live, there's loads of coffee shops that pretty much are cyclists only, so you get a bit of camaraderie and a chat with people from different clubs. It's just a really nice atmosphere. But yeah, football when I was younger as well, loved it. But there you go.
So last question from me. If you could give one piece of advice to your 19-year-old self now, what would it be?
Speak up.
Ooh, yes.
I think that is a very nice way to end this episode. So Shaun, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thanks, Shaun. It was nice talking to you.
I've really enjoyed the time. Anytime. Thank you for having me on.
It was a pleasure.
Brad and Dan talk shite.
What a fantastically upbeat and positive man Shaun is. So my heartfelt thanks to Shaun for jumping in at late notice. But I'm always staggered by people who've gone through so much, but then just throw their hands up and are like, "Yeah, I'm great. Life's great.
Hey, it's
Let's just crack on."
You learn how to live with these things, and if like it's truly the way to thrive with chronic illness is, as we talked about in the podcast, is knowing your body, listening to your body, and that evolves into,
I think, probably acceptance as well.
yes, that's what it evolves to.
Yeah, I think one of the big vibes I was getting from Shaun was acceptance.
Yes.
He was perfectly accepting of. There was no hint of blame. Well, there is anyone to blame, but you can always seem to find blame in mythical creatures or deities or gods or whatever you believe in.
It's true.
But there seemed to be no malice, no anger, no bitterness, no resentment. He always just floors me absolutely. But he needs to get a job in inspirational speaking. I think
He does a good job, that's for sure.
It does a very good job. You need to, next time you're feeling down or feeling like you're not going to hit your yoga targets, you need to just give him a call, man. Just get him on speed dial.
It's a good plan. I think that's a good plan.
In no time.
No, I look forward to actually talking to him more. He's a good person. I'll follow his adventures. Maybe even start cycling in the future when thy Barbie butt heals itself enough to let me.
Yeah. It's interesting how that's going to go for you and how confident you'll be, how quickly.
We'll see.
I mean, again, like Shaun said, you'll probably give it a go and realize it's a little sooner than it needed to be, and then step back and then give it a go again. But that was fantastic. I mean, even in my exhausted state, I really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, it'll be good for our YouTube viewers to comment on your state in between the intro and interview.
Yeah. So intro, I had slept. I've then had 3 days at a medical conference, and now need to sleep for 3 days just to catch up.
Good thing it's the weekend.
Well, yeah, apart from I'm back at work on Sunday, so I've literally got 1 day to recover. And then I've got a 6-hour drive on Sunday. So, anyway, positivity. That's what we've learned today. So, thank you very much for watching, listening.
Thank you.
And we will have a new episode for you very soon. Take care, guys.
Catch you next time.
There is this guy from Canada called Brad, and a guy from Yorkshire, he's called Dan. They got together when the bowels tried to kill them, and made this podcast to talk about their illness. Brad and Dan are talking shit. Brad and Dan are talking shit. Yes, Brad and Dan are talking shit to you and you and you.